What's up, guys? I wanted to make a quick video talking about the intermittent misfire problems I was having on my 2001 E46 and what eventually ended up being the cause of it and what I had to do to fix it. So in a few of my other videos, I mentioned that this guy, ever since I bought it, which was a little over 2 years ago, had an intermittent misfire condition where the car would only misfire if you were driving around and you kept it you kept it at 3,000 RPMs for about 3 to 5 seconds. Then one of the back three bank cylinders would always misfire. Now, it was a little bit weird because the misfire code would always hop around. A lot of the times it would be on cylinder 6, sometimes cylinder 5, and even sometimes it would show up as cylinder 4. Now, I basically hopped on the forums and tried almost everything that people recommended that would cause a, single cylinder misfire. I did tons of research. I tried a ton of things. I did all of the standard tests you would do: compression check, swap the coil packs around, swap the spark plugs, check for a bad head gasket. And basically, no matter what I tried, whether it be swapping sensors, swapping any of that stuff out, I still had this misfire condition. And I all but gave up with it because, I was putting so much time and energy into it and I was getting no results. And, as we know with anything, if you're putting a lot of time and energy into something and you're not seeing the results, then, it's a little hard to continue on. So just recently, actually, I was like, you know what? AI is getting so popular. It's really getting advanced. Maybe I should just prompt it. Maybe I'll input all of the parts I've changed, the tests that I've done, and just see what it has to say. So I actually ended up using ChatGPT. I went back and forth with it a couple times because inevitably there were things that I forgot that I had changed or tested. And basically after a few times of inputting things, getting something back from it, ChatGPT whittled it down to either being a wiring problem, which I knew it wasn't because I already ran through all the wires in the engine bay on this car, and a ECU problem. So the ECU thing is a little bit strange because it's one of those things where I came across it like one time on a forum and I was like, you know what? I've tried a whole bunch of things already. I'll just take a look at the ECU. I'll pop it out of its case. I'll do a visual inspection and see what that yields. So when I originally did that, I gave it a visual inspection and visually everything looked okay. So I kind of wrote that off as, there's no way it could be the ECU. Well, fast forward to when I'm prompting ChatGPT and it tells me, it's probably the ECU. I think, you know what? I actually got an extra ECU with this engine here that I have on the engine stand when I picked that up. I'll just swap that in. I knew that I would have to reflash the ECU probably to get it to work with this car because that's a 3-liter engine and there's a 2.5-liter engine in the car. So I thought, you know what? I have everything. Let's just try it and rule it out. So I actually ended up, I had to purchase a laptop because I actually haven't ever really had a laptop. So I just picked up like a couple $100, laptops to be able to mess with the plugging into the car and all that stuff. So I got a laptop in. I got the special cord that you need for these BMW cars to plug into the OBD2 port. I plugged it up and basically, I'm not going to show you guys in this video, but by looking online at forums and videos and stuff, I was able to do the flashing process, which is actually pretty easy these days with all the community support and the tools they've made. So I actually reflashed the ECU, so I guess one thing to know is the ECUs in these cars are called DMEs. I can't remember exactly what that stands for, but it's just BMW's like acronym for ECU. So yeah, I got the ECU from this engine right here, flashed up. I got it swapped into the car, and I took it for a test drive, and my misfire condition was gone. So this is what the ECU or DME looks like in the BMW E46. You can see I wrote a ridge on it because this is my original one out of this car. So the process to pull this thing apart is actually pretty easy. You see there's 4 Torx screws there. And I'll just pop this open so you guys can see what the inside looks like. So this is what the ECU looks like out of its case. There's just a bunch of chips on a board, as we would expect, to control all of the processes and everything that the ECU needs to do. So initially my thinking was that the ignition transistor chips had gone bad, because I did some reading on some forums. Granted, it wasn't for specifically the E46, but I saw that on other BMW models, people were having problems with these ignition transistor chips failing, and they had success with replacing them. So on the right hand side of the board here, you can see 6 chips. So these are our ignition transistor chips, 1 for each of the cylinders. So what this does is it interacts with your ignition coil somehow, and it seems like, you know, my original thought was maybe these are soft failing. So I actually went and ordered replacement chips for all those guys, and I desoldered the old ones and threw these new guys on. And I thought, you know, that maybe would be the reason why my ECU was not working correctly and causing a misfire. But I went and tested it, and that happened to not be the case. So since swapping those chips on this guy didn't really work, you know, I was hoping that maybe if I swapped the chips and that solved my problems, I would just throw this ECU back into the car. Because the caveat with what I did with the spare ECU that I have is, so basically how the security system works on these E46s is your key that you start the car with is programmed to the chips on this board. So for security reasons, and so anybody can't just steal your car, what needs to happen is your key has a little handshake with the chips on this board, and it says, you know, the board knows what your VIN number is, the key knows what your VIN number is. And so as long as those two things match, the car will crank and start. Now, what I had to do with this alternate ECU, because, you know, that would have had a alternate VIN stored from another car, that whatever that engine is from. With the community support, they actually have a patch out there where you're able to delete the immobilizer, which doesn't, so that basically will delete that handshake between the board and the key. Now, it's a little less safe, which, you know, I guess I'm not really worried about because my car lives in the garage. Anytime it's out of the garage, I'm usually in a spot where I can put eyes on it. And also, in order for somebody to truly steal your car, they would still have to get a key cut that matches your ignition exactly, or they would have to do some ghetto shit like hammer a screwdriver into the ignition or something. So what do I do with my original DME now? That was causing me problems for 2 years, caused me lots of fucking headaches. I wasted a lot of money trying to solve this thing. So I'm gonna throw this shit out. No, in all seriousness, guys, I'm just gonna hold on to this for spare parts, or for whenever I look into cloning it so that the ECU in the car has the correct VIN and ID. I know there is a way to put your ECU or DME for your E46 onto a bench setup, and then you're able to swap over or clone this. So it would essentially be cloning the VIN and whatever the ID number is or whatever from this over to that alternate ECU. I haven't had the time to look into that yet, and I'm just happy to have the car running flawlessly with no issues. So I'm gonna leave it as it is for now. Another thing I wanted to note quick is now that my ECU has been swapped and my misfire issue is gone, now I can finally start having fun with this car. So the original goal with this car was to turn it into a drift car. Drifting is something that I have been interested in for a number of years now. I built a sim rig about 10 years ago just to get seat time, because I knew, I wouldn't be in a spot financially to be able to do it in real life. But now that this guy's misfire issue is finally sorted, I can start doing upgrades to it. Well, first of all, I need to weld the diff, and probably pretty directly after that, I'll be doing some suspension changes. But yeah, I'm just pretty stoked to be able to actually enjoy this car now how I originally intended. So that's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to make a pretty short video in hopes that, if anybody else is having an intermittent misfire, that they've tried everything, replacing all the sensors, all the parts, trying all the tests to rule everything out, and you still have not found the cause of that misfire. I hope that this video helps somebody out and it causes them to look at their DME, because like I said earlier, in all my browsing of the forums, I only came across it one time, and I hit on every other thing that they mentioned on the forums. I replaced everything else, and none of it solved my problems until I swapped this guy out. So that's it, guys. I hope this video is going to help somebody, and have a good one.